Igbo mụ na-ege ntị, anyị ekene unu ọzọ n'ụbọchị nke taa. Anyị sịkwa nke chiri ya zelu. Alright, once again, good morning, good afternoon, good night. It depends your time and your location. We are joining us today at Eastern is 24. Anyị sịkwa meka Chukwu ka abịa ma pụrụ m iri na gozie unu niile, gozie unu na nkwọ, gozikwa unu n'orie, gozie unu n'afọ, gozie unu n'oke. Ise. Anyị sịkwa na Chukwu ka abịa ma gozie Maazị Nnamdi Kanu, chekwaba ebe ọ bụ na ọ nọ. Gozikwa Maazị PM n'eze ise. Alright, adịka o si dị anyị gbapụ na ọsọ n'ife anyị ji n'iwe akwụkwọ n'ụbọchị nkịtị unu n'anya, ife a bụ powerful news na drop. So anyị sịkwa ka anyị gosi ya ụmụ Chineke ka fa nebe ya anya. Alright, according to the IPOB, they are saying a na-ekwu that na a na-enwe in touch with UN for a referendum to conduct referendum in Nigeria, and they a very powerful move. Called, remember, if I name na channel anyị bụ gee ntị ọfụma ime ihe ọbụla ga-eweta obi aṅụrị n'ala Igbo. Anyị ada akọ ụwa anyị ọnụ. Ihe bụ Old Eastern Region. Okay, now our aim is to bring peace and to bring a gospel of Chukwuka Biafra that will make the people of Biafra happy. That is what we are doing. Alright, in this audio, in a jigo boa, if I arise news, kọwasịrị ife niile ka ya bife si wee gaa, then ị ga-esi ya bife gabaro ka drop your own comment ka ife ichere basta maka audio a ị ga-anụ ugbu a. Alright, over to you.
The indigenous people of Biafra on Tuesday claimed to be in talks with the United Nations to hold a referendum for a sovereign state of Biafra. In a statement by the group's media and publicity secretary, Ima Powerful, the group is making efforts for the referendum any moment soon, adding that residents within the Biafra territory and those living beyond the boundaries of Biafra will be able to determine their own fate. The group expects the United Nations to supervise the referendum and are calling for freedom for all and not just for Biafrans alone. I mean, this is another, what do you call it, Brexit?
Yes.
How is it possible to have a sovereign state without any form of, partition? I mean, I would like to know, how does that work?
It's possible. Okay. You can have, these are called, there are different types of referendums. These ones are called independence referendums. And an independence referendum does not actually need the consent of the national government. What tends to happen is if there's some kind of separatist movement, and that separatist movement gets support maybe at an election, they can now use that momentum to demand a referendum, not even of the national, or in our case, the federal government, just of their own people.
Okay.
They put a question on the ballot and people answer the question and they vote. And the United Nations will not call a referendum. Every country has their sovereignty. The United Nations will supervise, they'll observe if they're told to, they'll monitor a referendum if they're asked to. The United Nations is also relevant if the referendum succeeds and maybe the national government doesn't want to apply, the results of the referendum. The United Nations can come in and recognize that country as an independent country to give that referendum credence. So, yeah.
So then what happens to the people that are not in support of the sovereign state of Biafra, that are in that territory as well? What happens?
I'm speaking hypothetically. Yes. The referendum might not even happen because, like I said, it usually happens on the back of a popular movement. There has to be some momentum. You can't just wake up and have a referendum. Like if there's an election, for example, and let's say, I don't know, a particular political party, a separatist party, wins all the states, then from there you can now use that momentum to call for a referendum. Right now that has not happened.
Yes.
So if at all the referendum does happen, if people vote no, then vote to be counted, then it's no, and they stay in Nigeria. But if there's an overwhelming yes or a majority yes, then they leave. If at all the federal government allows it. And the United Nations and the international community rally around the new states.
Well, they have claimed that it's going to be a peaceful process. I don't know how that's going to be, but I think that we can come back to continue on this discussion.
Let's take a short break. When we return, I will give you my views on the issue of the referendum. Well, before we went on break, we were talking about the request of the Indigenous Peoples of Biafra, through Emma Powerful, the secretary, asking for a referendum to be organized by the United Nations. Now, the subject we're dealing with, basically, is self-determination. And self-determination, is an internationally recognized right. by various UN conventions. Whether you are talking about Kosovo, or you are talking about East Timor, or you are talking about Cameroon. And it is indeed true that the United Nations can supervise referendums. The right of a people to determine their own future, to determine their own sovereignty. Now, two examples. In February 1961, the UN supervised the referendum to determine whether Northern Cameroon or Southern Cameroon would join Nigeria or join Cameroon. And that referendum was conducted. At the end of the day, when the votes were tallied, people can vote yes or no. At the end of it, Northern Cameroon joined Nigeria. Southern Cameroon, led by Ndeli and Co., joined Cameroon, the French-speaking Cameroon. Now, this was the decision over the British-occupied part of Cameroon at the time. In 1999, it was East Timor, and it was the president of Indonesia at the time who approached the United Nations to allow the people of East Timor to decide whether they would like to have special autonomy within Indonesia or have their own independence. And of course, they rejected special autonomy within Indonesia. In 2002, East Timor became independent on its own. And then you have the example of Kosovo and all of that. But whatever happens, there is no way that the United Nations can do a referendum inside Nigeria over and above the head of an existing sovereign. That is the Nigerian government itself.
Yes.
Now, would there be a referendum in Biafra? And how will it pan out? I know that there are many agitators from the eastern part of the country who say Nigeria has been unjust to Igbos in the Nigerian Federation, that Igbos have been marginalized, because at the basis of questions of self-determination, it's always about citizenship, it's always about justice, it's always about equity. Would they be able to get enough votes? Well, my gut feeling is that, look, most Igbos will probably not want to leave Nigeria. I may be wrong. And speaking for myself, I'd rather have Nigeria as it is, as a diverse nation, you know, as this rainbow nation, multicultural. And I mean, a Nigeria without Igbos would not be the same Nigeria.
All right, but
and I hope that even if it is put to vote, that more Igbos would rather stay in Nigeria, because Igbos are already, you know, completely enmeshed in the Nigerian Federation. They are part of the fabric of this country. And I think that the ordinary Igbo man does not share the same sentiments with Emma Powerful.
Well, you never know. You never.
Alright, unu anụgo nu ya bụ audio nke m gosiri unu n'oge ugbu a. Ka efu nwere ike ikwu gbasata maka ya bụ audio. Yes, drop on the comment section below. And once again, this is Eastern News 24, where we give to you the latest and the latest update, the news where they happen across the globe. Alright, and also, Kabaru ka isoyela na ya na-eme. Kabaru ka iburu na support the freedom of ndị Igbo and the freedom of Biafra. Alright, Kabaru ka ịbụ onye na-ekwu maka ezigbo okwu n'ihe a na-ekwu maka nnwere onwe. Abụ na onye na-aka ọnụ. Abụ na onye na-aka ọnụ. We are not fighting ourselves. Remember what Mazi Nnamdi Kanu says last time on Melapiana court. I am fighting to defend you. All those killings must stop. We are not killing ourselves. I'm here to defend the whole Biafra land. That is what Mazi Nnamdi Kanu says. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu did not say that we should continue as in blaming ourselves in one mistakes or the other. So, because in a Kabaru ka ịma ma ife anyị na-eme ọ dị in line with our able leader Mazi Nnamdi Kanu decision. Ọ gwụna ka ọ ha m n'ọnụ. Daalụ niile nkwụsị esola na ife anyị na-eme n'elu akwụkwọ a. I say once again, this is Eastern News 24, a home of latest news on what is happening in Biafra land. Daalụ ụmụnne m, ka emesịa.